Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. Imagine someone handed you a computer from 1994 and it had the latest version of Photoshop on it. Would you take it? The illustrator Bob Stark definitely wouldn't, and not because he can't use the software. The reason he declines this offer is because he already has a perfectly good computer running Photoshop 3.0, and he has no intention of changing that. 30 years have marched on, but Stark is still using the same setup that he started with. Back then, very few illustrators were even touching computers, let alone Photoshop. In an interview, he explained his reasoning plainly. He said, "I was looking for something that would let me scan in my pen and ink drawings and then color them. An art director friend told me Adobe Photoshop was just what I was looking for. And when I open up Photoshop 3.0, it's there and ready to go in 4 seconds flat. Believe me, I'm anything but a technophobe. But I rarely ever upgrade because I'm usually inundated with work and I simply don't have the time to learn new versions. For me, it's simply a matter of pragmatism. That pragmatism is something that we could all stand to embrace. We're constantly bombarded with new software, new upgrades, and new information. It's easy to feel like you're falling behind if you're not keeping pace. But the reality is that you often don't need to upgrade at all. A magazine publisher once looked at my cameras and asked me a question. His question was, how do you know when to upgrade and when to leave well enough alone? My cameras are Leica Q2s, not cheap, not new, but they do exactly what I need them to do. My answer was simple. You stop upgrading when people start saying wow. Not once, but consistently. My photographs went from average to good and from good to genuinely impressive. And somewhere in that arc, people started reacting with real enthusiasm. That's the point at which the tool stopped being the limiting factor, and therefore the point at which upgrading stopped making any sense. The principle goes well beyond photography. It's easy to spot a beginner. You look around you in almost every field and you can see that beginner. They're scrambling. I was that beginner. When I started out with watercolors, I wanted a dozen brushes. I wanted a full array of tubes. If I was designing a layout, I'd throw in as many fonts as I could find. Even a few years ago, I bought 10 different language learning apps trying to find which one worked. All of this scrambling seems unnecessary, but it is very vital, especially when you're starting out. You need to cast a wide net before you know what to keep. But it has to be a phase, not a permanent state. And if we were to slip back to the topic of photography, we know something. We know that some of the world's most iconic photographs were taken with extremely basic cameras. They were very rudimentary. Film, no autofocus, no computational processing. And yet the results were staggering. The benchmark was never the equipment, it was always the outcome. Consistent results that made the photographer proud and made the audiences stop and look. Using his very limited palette, Bob Stark has done very well for himself. He has authored over 40 books. He has illustrated for clients ranging from the New York Times to the New Yorker to names of clients that I can't even pronounce. You can find his work in multiple advertising campaigns, games, and even Hallmark greeting cards. Not bad for someone who hasn't updated his software since the mid-90s. Yet sometimes you have to upgrade so that you can move towards less, not more. My Leica Q2 was, in one sense, a step back. Before that, I had a more complex Canon camera, and this had a setup with multiple lenses, zoom lenses, pancake lenses, all kinds of lenses, and dozens of configuration options. The Leica has fewer features, and it has a fixed lens. It also costs more, but it removed friction. It let me focus on making photographs rather than managing equipment. That said, convenience is also a legitimate reason to upgrade. We had a perfectly good slide projector for years, and then one day I spotted one that was a third of the weight, and it was barely bigger than an iPad. My wife Renuka wasn't keen because the old one worked just fine. But once we made the switch, she was delighted. Sometimes the result isn't better, it's just easier to get to. It's more convenient. That's why we have lighter umbrellas, slimmer phones, and faster laptops. But these are the exceptions. In most cases, less is genuinely more. A single well-chosen tool used deeply will outperform a cabinet full of options used superficially. A limited palette forces mastery. If you want to get good at something, give yourself permission to scramble at the start. Try things, explore, make mistakes, but set a time limit on that phase. Then narrow down, commit to a small set of tools and go deep. Your goal is to create the wow with less, not more. That's the real difference between beginners and seasoned professionals. Beginners accumulate while professionals, they pay back. If you really want to get good, avoid the buffet. Choose less and look for the wow factor instead. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. What's happening in Psychotactics land? If you wanted to tell great stories but don't know how to do so, this is a good chance. This storytelling course is crucial because it shows you how to work with a single line. Most people think that you have to create a story by finding a complete story, and that's not true. You have to find a single line, and then you build the story around it. And finally, you have to do one more thing, and that is connect. Because why are you telling the story? If I just tell you a story, you want to know how does it end and why is it important? The problem is when you're trying to connect a story about watermelons to podcasting, or bees to pricing, or something just as obscure. And this is what the storytelling course does really well for you. It shows you how to build from that line and then connect. You'll find goodies at psychotactics.com/workshops/storytelling. Sign up for the waiting list and you'll get the goodies even if you decide not to join the course. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? This podcast was about not upgrading, and yet there are things that you should do. One of the things is the speech-to-text facility that we have now because of AI. And I've started to do so many things faster so I can spend more time, or rather waste more time at the cafe, or just sleep, do nothing. This is not the first time I'm mentioning this software. It's the third time, and yet very few people have written in to ask me how they can access the software. So if you're interested in speeding up all of your communication, which is your messages, your answers to people, whether you're posting something on a forum or anywhere else, stop fiddling around with that keyboard on your phone or even at your computer. Start dictating and then use the transform tool to get the text really polished, and do this all in a matter of seconds. Email me at sean@psychotactics.com because I have a link for you where you can test it free of charge. That's it from me. See you in 5000bc.com. Bye-bye.